The day Rebecca Winters packed her trunk with trembling hands, she knew she would never see Aztec, New Mexico territory again, and the thought tore through her chest like a bullet she had not seen coming. The sun had barely risen over the dusty streets when she heard the knock on her door, 3 sharp raps that made her heart sink. She already knew what waited on the other side. For 3 days now, the whispers had grown louder, the stares more hostile, the accusations more vicious. It had started with Prudence Carmichael, the mayor's wife, a woman whose tongue was sharper than any knife and whose influence spread through Aztec like poison in a well. Rebecca opened the door to find Sheriff Morton standing there, hat in his hands, his weathered face unable to meet her eyes. Behind him stood Mayor Carmichael himself, along with 3 other men from the town council. The early morning light cast long shadows across their stern faces. "Miss Winters," the sheriff began, his voice rough with discomfort. "The council has made a decision. You need to leave town by noon today." "On what grounds?" Rebecca asked, though she already knew the answer. Her voice remained steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Mayor Carmichael stepped forward, his expression cold and self-righteous. "You know exactly what grounds, Miss Winters. My wife saw you speaking with that half-breed boy, touching his shoulder, encouraging inappropriate behavior. We cannot have a schoolteacher of such loose morals corrupting our children." Heat flooded Rebecca's cheeks, not from shame but from fury. "I was consoling Billy Thatcher because the other children were tormenting him about his mother being Apache. I was doing my job, teaching compassion and kindness, something this town could benefit from learning." "Watch your tongue," Carmichael snapped. "You are in no position to lecture us. Furthermore, you have been seen walking alone with men unchaperoned, wearing dresses that show your ankles and filling our children's heads with dangerous ideas about equality and education for girls beyond basic arithmetic. We do not need your kind of influence here." Rebecca's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She was 23 years old, had traveled from St. Louis 2 years ago with dreams of making a difference in this rough frontier town, and she had poured her heart into teaching the children of Aztec. She had watched them learn to read, seen their faces light up with understanding, encouraged the girls to pursue knowledge with the same vigor as the boys. And now, because she refused to bow to the narrow-minded prejudices of people like Prudence Carmichael, she was being cast out like a criminal. "You have until noon," Sheriff Morton repeated, still unable to look at her directly. "I am sorry, Miss Winters, but the decision has been made." They left her standing in the doorway of the small house she had rented from old Mrs. Patterson, who had at least had the decency to cry when she told Rebecca she could no longer let her stay. The town had made its choice, and Mrs. Patterson needed to survive here long after Rebecca was gone. Rebecca closed the door and leaned against it, fighting back tears. She would not cry. She would not give them the satisfaction. Instead, she methodically began packing her belongings, her hands moving with deliberate precision even as her mind raced. She folded her dresses carefully, stacked her books, wrapped her few precious possessions in cloth. Everything she owned in the world fit into 2 trunks and a carpet bag. 2 years of her life, and this was all she had to show for it, along with a scarlet letter she did not deserve and a reputation destroyed by gossip and lies. The knock on the door at 9:30 startled her. She opened it cautiously to find young Emma Harrison standing there, tears streaming down her round face. Behind her stood 3 more of Rebecca's students, all girls, all crying. "Miss Winters, please do not go," Emma sobbed. "You are the best teacher we have ever had." "It is not fair what they are doing to you." Rebecca knelt down, pulling the 12-year-old into a hug. "Life is often not fair, Emma, but you must remember what I have taught you. Keep reading, keep learning. Never let anyone tell you that you are less capable than a boy. Promise me." "I promise," Emma whispered against her shoulder. The other girls gathered around, and Rebecca embraced each of them, whispering words of encouragement, fighting to keep her voice from breaking. These children had become like her own, and leaving them felt like abandoning her purpose, her calling. After they left, Rebecca finished her packing in numb silence. At 11:30, she hired a wagon from the livery to take her belongings to the stage coach station. The driver, a grizzled man named Pete, loaded her trunks without comment, though his eyes held sympathy. As the wagon rolled through the dusty streets of Aztec toward the station on the edge of town, Rebecca looked at the place she had called home. The schoolhouse with its whitewashed walls and bell tower stood empty now, waiting for whatever teacher would replace her, someone more willing to conform, to bend to the will of small minds and cruel tongues. The general store, the church, the saloon, the clusters of adobe buildings and wooden structures that made up this frontier town, all of it blurred as tears finally escaped despite her best efforts. She wiped them away quickly, refusing to let anyone see her break. The stagecoach station was a small building at the southern edge of town, where the road stretched out toward Santa Fe. The next stage would not arrive until the following morning, which meant Rebecca would have to spend the night at the station's boarding house, a rough establishment that catered to travelers passing through. Pete helped her unload her trunks, accepting the coins she pressed into his weathered palm. "You were a good teacher, Miss Winters," he said gruffly. "My daughter Sarah learned more from you in 1 year than from the previous teacher in 3. It is a shame what they are doing." "Thank you, Pete," Rebecca managed, her throat tight. As the wagon pulled away, Rebecca stood alone with her belongings, feeling more lost than she had since her parents died when she was 18, leaving her to make her own way in the world. She had thought teaching was her path, her purpose. Now that had been ripped away, and she had no idea what came next. She was arranging for her trunks to be stored and securing a room for the night when she heard the thunder of hooves approaching fast. She turned to see a rider racing toward the station, dust billowing behind the horse. As the rider drew closer, Rebecca recognized him, though she had never spoken to him directly. Ethan Dalton was a cowboy who worked at the Morrison Ranch, one of the largest cattle operations in the territory. She had seen him in town occasionally, a tall man in his mid-20s with dark hair and striking blue eyes, always polite when he tipped his hat to ladies, always calm even when other cowboys got rowdy on Saturday nights. He had a reputation as an honest, hard-working man who kept to himself and never caused trouble. He reined his horse to a stop in front of the station, dismounting in one fluid motion. His eyes locked on Rebecca with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Miss Winters," he said, his voice deep and urgent, "I heard what happened. You cannot leave." Rebecca blinked in surprise. "I do not have a choice, Mr. Dalton. The town has made its decision." "That decision is wrong," Ethan said firmly, stepping closer. His hat shaded his face, but she could see the determination in his expression. "I know what happened. Everyone who has a lick of sense knows you did nothing wrong. You are the best teacher this town has ever had, and they are running you out because you refuse to bow to ignorance and prejudice." "How do you know what happened?" Rebecca asked, bewildered by his sudden appearance and passionate defense. Ethan's jaw tightened. "My sister works as a maid in the Carmichael house. She heard the whole thing. Prudence Carmichael has been planning this for weeks, ever since you refused to stop teaching the girls advanced mathematics. She wants her daughter to grow up knowing only enough to catch a husband and run a household, and you were encouraging Susan Carmichael to dream bigger. That is what this is really about." Rebecca felt tears threatening again and blinked them back. Even if you are right, it changes nothing. The decision has been made. I have nowhere to go back to in town, no way to support myself. The stage leaves tomorrow morning and I will be on it. What if you did have a reason to stay? Ethan said, and something in his tone made Rebecca's heart skip. What if you came back as my wife? The world seemed to tilt. Rebecca stared at him, certain she had misheard. I beg your pardon. Ethan removed his hat, running a hand through his dark hair in a gesture that seemed almost nervous. I know this is sudden, Miss Winters. I know we have never even spoken before today. But I have watched you in town, seen how you treat those children with kindness and patience, heard you stand up for what is right even when it cost you. I have been working for the past 5 years to save money to buy my own land. I have 160 acres now, good grazing land with a creek running through it. I am building a house, just finished the main structure last month. It is not fancy, but it is solid and growing. He took a breath, his blue eyes never leaving hers. I came to town this morning to buy supplies and heard what was happening to you. I rode straight out here because I could not let you leave thinking everyone in this territory is as small-minded as those council members. You deserve better, Miss Winters. You deserve a place where you can be yourself, where you can teach if you want to, where you can live without judgment. Rebecca's mind was reeling. You are asking me to marry you. You do not even know me. I know enough, Ethan said. I know you are brave and principled. I know you care about others more than yourself. I know you are educated and kind and exactly the sort of woman I would want to build a life with if you would have me. This is insane, Rebecca whispered, but even as she said it, her practical mind was already working through the implications. If she married, she would have a home, protection, a reason to stay in the territory. She would not have to return to St. Louis in disgrace or try to find another teaching position somewhere that might have heard the rumors about her. She would have a fresh start, a chance to prove the gossips wrong. But marriage was not something to be entered into lightly, especially to a complete stranger. Mr. Dalton, I appreciate your offer truly, but we do not know each other. Marriage is a serious commitment, not a solution to a problem. I agree, Ethan said, his voice earnest. Which is why I am not asking you to marry me today. I am asking you to give me a chance to court you properly, to let me show you that I am serious about this. Come out to my ranch for a few days. Let me prove that I can provide for you, that I am someone you could build a life with. If after that you still want to leave, I will take you to Santa Fe myself and wish you well. But at least give us both a chance before you disappear forever. Rebecca looked at this stranger who was offering her everything she had lost and more. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was madness. But something deeper, something in the way he looked at her with respect and hope rather than judgment, made her hesitate. I do not know you, she repeated, but her voice was weaker now. Then get to know me, Ethan said. I am not asking you to trust me blindly. I am asking you to give me a few days to earn your trust. If you feel uncomfortable at any point, say the word and I will bring you straight back here. You have my word as a gentleman. Your word as a gentleman from a man I met 5 minutes ago, Rebecca said, but there was no real bite to it. Ethan's lips curved in a slight smile. Fair point. How about this? We stop by Mrs. Patterson's boarding house. She has known me since I was 18 and came to this territory. She can vouch for my character. If she tells you I am not trustworthy, I will ride away and never bother you again. That was reasonable. Mrs. Patterson was the only person in Aztec who had shown Rebecca any real kindness during this ordeal. If she said Ethan Dalton was a good man, then Rebecca could at least consider his offer. All right, she said slowly. We will speak to Mrs. Patterson. Relief washed over Ethan's face. He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, Rebecca took it. He helped her onto his horse, then mounted behind her. The proximity was startling, his solid presence at her back, his arms on either side of her as he took the reins. Rebecca felt her face flush but kept her spine straight as they rode back into Aztec. The few people on the streets stared openly as Ethan Dalton rode through town with the disgraced schoolteacher seated in front of him. Rebecca saw Prudence Carmichael standing outside the general store, her face turning an unattractive shade of red as she recognized Rebecca. Let her stare, Rebecca thought with a surge of defiance. Let them all see that someone believed in her. They stopped in front of Mrs. Patterson's house, and Ethan helped Rebecca down before tying his horse to the post. The older woman opened the door before they could knock, her eyes widening in surprise. "Rebecca, I thought you had left already. And Ethan Dalton, what are you doing here?" "May we come in, Mrs. Patterson?" Rebecca asked. "We need to speak with you." The older woman ushered them into her parlor, her face creased with concern. Once they were seated, Ethan explained his proposal, his voice steady and respectful. Mrs. Patterson listened without interruption, her sharp eyes moving between them. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to Rebecca. "Ethan Dalton is one of the finest young men I have known. He came to this territory 7 years ago after his parents died back in Kansas. He was just 18, had nothing but a horse and a saddle, and he worked harder than any 3 men to make something of himself. He saved every penny, never gambled, never drank to excess, never caused trouble. When he says he has land and a house, he earned every inch of it honestly." She reached over and took Rebecca's hand. "I know this seems sudden, child, but if you stay, you will be defying the whole town council. They will make your life impossible unless you have protection, a husband who can stand between you and their judgment. Ethan can do that. More importantly, I believe he genuinely wants to." Rebecca felt her throat tighten. "But we are strangers, Mrs. Patterson. How can I agree to marry a man I do not know?" "You do not have to agree to anything yet," the older woman said gently. "But I think you should take him up on his offer. Spend some time at his ranch, get to know him in a safe setting. I will tell anyone who asks that you are being courted properly. That alone will put the lie to some of the gossip about you being a woman of loose morals." Rebecca looked at Ethan, who waited patiently, letting her make the decision without pressure. She thought about the stagecoach waiting to take her away from everything she had worked for, about starting over in a strange city with no prospects and a ruined reputation. She thought about the children she would never teach again, about the dreams she had nurtured for 2 years going up in smoke. And she thought about this stranger who had ridden after her when no one else had, who saw her worth when the rest of the town saw only scandal, who offered her not just rescue but partnership, respect, a chance at a real future. "All right," she said finally. "I will come to your ranch for a few days, but I make no promises beyond that, Mr. Dalton." "That is all I ask, Miss Winters," Ethan said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. "And please call me Ethan. Then you should call me Rebecca." Mrs. Patterson smiled, her eyes bright. "You are making the right choice, child. Now, let me pack you some provisions for the journey. It is a 2-hour ride to Ethan's ranch, and you will need to eat." While Mrs. Patterson bustled about preparing food, Ethan went to retrieve Rebecca's trunks from the stagecoach station. By the time he returned with a small wagon borrowed from the livery, the sun was high in the sky and Rebecca's belongings were loaded and ready. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Patterson pulled Rebecca aside. "Give him a chance, Rebecca. I have seen the way he looks at you when he thought no one was watching. That man is already halfway in love with you, and he just met you this morning. That is not something to dismiss lightly." Rebecca embraced the older woman, grateful beyond words for her kindness. Then she climbed onto the wagon seat beside Ethan, and they rolled out of Aztec heading east toward his ranch. For the first half hour, they rode in silence. The only sounds the creak of the wagon wheels and the clip-clop of the horses' hooves. The New Mexico landscape stretched around them, all red rock and desert scrub, vast sky and distant mesas. It was harsh but beautiful, this land that was still more territory than state, still wild and unforgiving. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I should tell you about myself, I suppose. So you know what you are getting into." "That would be helpful," Rebecca said, allowing a small smile. Ethan kept his eyes on the road ahead. "I was born in Wichita, Kansas. My father was a blacksmith, my mother took in sewing. We were not wealthy, but we were happy. Then when I was 17, cholera came through town. Both my parents died within a week of each other. My younger sister Sarah and I were left alone. I was not making enough as a blacksmith's apprentice to support us both, so I decided to head west where land was cheap and opportunity was abundant." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Rebecca heard the old pain underneath. "Sarah was only 15, too young to make the journey with me safely. I sent her to live with our aunt in St. Louis. I have been sending money every month since, and she came out to join me a year ago, now that she is older. She works for the Carmichaels because the pay is decent, even though the woman is a terror. Sarah plans to save enough to open a dress shop in Aztec. She is the one who told you about Prudence Carmichael's plans," Rebecca said, remembering. Ethan nodded. "Sarah has heard every vicious word that woman has said about you. She wanted to speak up in your defense, but I told her not to risk her position. I wish now I had let her. Maybe if more people had stood up for you, the council would not have gotten away with this." "It is not your fault," Rebecca said quietly. "Or Sarah's. The truth is, I knew I was pushing boundaries. I just believed that educating children, all children, was worth the risk. I suppose I was wrong." "You were not wrong," Ethan said firmly. "The town was wrong. And they will realize it when they see what they lost." They rode on, and gradually the conversation flowed more easily. Rebecca told him about growing up in St. Louis, about her father who had been a professor at the university and her mother who had encouraged her to pursue education, despite the social constraints on women. She talked about coming west after her parents died, wanting to make a difference, wanting to feel useful and needed. Ethan listened intently, asking questions that showed genuine interest. He told her about working as a ranch hand for 5 years, learning everything he could about cattle and land management. He described his property with a passion that made it come alive, the creek that never ran dry, the natural meadow perfect for grazing, the stand of cottonwoods that would shade the house in summer. "I am building it to last," he said. "Solid foundation, good timber for the frame. Right now it is just 4 rooms, a main living area with a stone fireplace, 2 bedrooms and a kitchen. But I designed it so I can add on as needed. I want to build a proper dining room, maybe a study with bookshelves for someone who likes to read." He glanced at her meaningfully, and Rebecca felt warmth spread through her chest. He was already imagining her in that house, picturing a future together, and instead of feeling pressured, she felt something else. Hope, maybe. Possibility. The sun was starting to descend toward the horizon when they finally turned off the main road onto a rougher track that wound through a canyon. Red rocks rose on either side, and Rebecca could hear the sound of running water echoing off the stone walls. "We are almost there," Ethan said. "The ranch is just through this canyon. I know it is remote, but that is part of what I love about it. No one can tell you how to live out here. You make your own rules, build your own life." They emerged from the canyon into a wide valley, and Rebecca caught her breath. A creek sparkled in the late afternoon sun, winding through grassland dotted with cattle. Cottonwood trees clustered along the water, their leaves shimmering silver and green. And there, on a slight rise overlooking the valley, stood a house made of rough-cut timber and adobe, its windows catching the golden light. It was not fancy or large, but it looked solid and welcoming, exactly as Ethan had described. Smoke curled from the stone chimney, and Rebecca could see a small barn and corral behind the house, along with several outbuildings. "It is beautiful," she said honestly, and saw pleasure flash across Ethan's face. "I am glad you think so. I have worked hard on it." As they drew closer, a figure emerged from the house. Rebecca recognized Sarah Dalton immediately, a pretty young woman of 19 with her brother's dark hair and a friendly smile. She waved enthusiastically as the wagon approached. "You actually convinced her to come," Sarah called out, hurrying down to meet them. "I told Ethan he was crazy riding off like that, but he would not listen." "Sarah, this is Miss Rebecca Winters," Ethan said as he helped Rebecca down from the wagon. "Rebecca, my sister Sarah." "Please, just Rebecca," she said, taking Sarah's extended hand. Sarah squeezed it warmly. "I am so glad you are here. What they did to you in town was horrible, and my brother has been planning how to fix it ever since I told him this morning." "I did not think he would actually propose marriage, though. That was bold even for him." "Sarah," Ethan said warningly, but Rebecca laughed, feeling some of the tension ease from her shoulders. "It was certainly unexpected," she admitted. "But I am here to see if perhaps your brother is as honorable as Mrs. Patterson claims." "Oh, he is painfully honorable," Sarah said with a grin. "Sometimes I wish he would do something scandalous just to prove he is human, but you could not find a better man if you searched the whole territory. Come on, let me show you the house. I came out this afternoon to clean and prepare a room for you. Ethan sent a rider ahead to let me know you might be coming." The inside of the house was clean and simply furnished but comfortable. The main room had the promised stone fireplace, a sturdy table with chairs, a worn but inviting sofa and braided rugs on the wooden floor. The walls were bare but solid, the windows fitted with real glass, a luxury on the frontier. Sarah led Rebecca to one of the bedrooms, which held a bed with a quilt, a dresser, and a small table with a basin and pitcher. "This is yours for as long as you want it. The other bedroom is Ethan's. I sleep in the barn loft when I stay over, which I am doing tonight so you have proper chaperoning. Would not want to damage your reputation further, though I suppose that ship has sailed thanks to Prudence Carmichael." Despite everything, Rebecca found herself liking Sarah's straightforward manner. "Thank you for telling your brother what was happening. I appreciate it, even if his solution is somewhat unconventional." "Unconventional is putting it mildly," Sarah said with a laugh. "But Ethan has been alone out here for too long. He works himself half to death building this ranch, and he deserves some happiness. I think you could make each other happy if you give it a chance." Rebecca sat on the bed, suddenly exhausted from the emotional turmoil of the day. "I do not know if I can trust my judgment anymore. I thought I was doing the right thing in Aztec, and look how that ended." Sarah sat beside her, her expression turning serious. "You were doing the right thing. Those council members were wrong, and so is anyone who thinks educating girls is dangerous. My brother sent me to school in St. Louis, made sure I learned more than just sewing and cooking. He believes women should have the same opportunities as men, which is rare out here. That is one of the reasons I think you two would suit." Before Rebecca could respond, Ethan knocked on the door frame. "I am going to tend to the horses and cattle before dark. I will be within shouting distance if you need anything. Make yourself at home, Rebecca. Everything here is open to you." After he left, Sarah showed Rebecca the rest of the house, including the kitchen with its iron stove and good supply of provisions. Ethan is actually a decent cook, believe it or not. He had to learn when he first came out here and lived in a tent while building the barn. Now he can make a stew that will not poison you, which is more than most cowboys can say. They prepared dinner together, Sarah chattering cheerfully about her plans for the dress shop and her hopes of finding a good man someday, though she insisted she was in no hurry. Rebecca found herself relaxing in the younger woman's company, grateful not to be alone with her tumultuous thoughts. When Ethan came in for dinner, cleaned up and changed into a fresh shirt, they sat around the table together. It felt strangely domestic, almost like family, and Rebecca realized how much she had missed this kind of simple companionship. Teaching had kept her busy, but her evenings in Aztec had been lonely, spent preparing lessons or reading by herself. The food was good, simple but hearty, and the conversation flowed easily. Ethan told stories about mishaps learning to manage cattle, making both women laugh with his self-deprecating humor. Sarah shared gossip about people in town, carefully avoiding anything related to Rebecca's situation out of tact. After dinner, they sat by the fire as darkness fell outside. Sarah excused herself eventually, claiming exhaustion, though Rebecca suspected she was giving them privacy. Once they were alone, the atmosphere grew more intimate, the firelight casting dancing shadows on the walls. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said quietly. "I know this must be overwhelming." "It is," Rebecca admitted. "This morning I was packing to leave everything behind, and now I am sitting in a stranger's house contemplating a future I never imagined. It feels unreal." Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I want you to know, Rebecca, I am not expecting anything from you except a chance. If we spend these days together and you decide this is not what you want, I will honor that. I will not force you into anything. But I hope you will give us both the opportunity to see if this could work." Rebecca met his eyes, those steady blue eyes that held such earnest hope. "Why did you do this, Ethan? Really? You could have any woman in the territory if you wanted. Why chase after a disgraced schoolteacher you have never even met?" Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "Do you remember the day last spring when you brought your students outside for lessons? It was a beautiful day, and you were teaching them about the plants and rocks, turning the whole landscape into a classroom." Rebecca nodded slowly, surprised he had noticed. "I was in town that day, saw you with those children. You were so alive, so passionate about teaching them. And there was one boy, Billy Thatcher, the one who was part of the reason you got run out. He was struggling to identify some plant, and the other children were getting impatient with him. You knelt down in the dirt beside him, not caring about your dress, and you took as much time as he needed until he understood. The look on his face when he finally got it right, like you had given him a gift, and the way you celebrated his success like it was your own." Ethan's voice grew soft. "I thought then that you were the kind of woman I wanted in my life. Someone who cared about others, who saw value in every person regardless of their background, who was not afraid to get dirt on her dress to help someone learn. I have thought about you often since then, though I never had the courage to approach you. When I heard what was happening today, I knew I could not let you disappear without at least trying." Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "You have been watching me all this time." "Not in a strange way," Ethan said quickly. "I just noticed you, that is all. The way a man notices a woman who captures his attention, and everything I noticed made me respect you more." "I do not feel very respectable right now," Rebecca said softly. "I feel like a failure, like I let down everyone who believed in me." Ethan moved to sit beside her on the sofa, close but not touching. "You are not a failure, Rebecca. You are a woman who stood up for what was right even when it cost you everything. That takes more courage than most people ever show. The town failed you, not the other way around." His words broke something open inside her, and suddenly Rebecca was crying, all the pain and anger and fear of the day pouring out. Ethan pulled her gently against his shoulder, letting her sob into his shirt, his hand rubbing slow circles on her back. He did not try to quiet her or tell her everything would be fine. He just held her, solid and steady, until the storm passed. When she finally pulled back, embarrassed, Ethan handed her a handkerchief. "I am sorry," she whispered. "That was unprofessional of me." "There is no such thing as professional when it comes to emotions," Ethan said gently. "You have been through something terrible today. You are allowed to feel it." Rebecca wiped her eyes, looking at this man who had upended her entire world in the space of a few hours. "I want to be honest with you, Ethan. I am scared. I am scared of trusting someone new, scared of making another mistake, scared of building a life here only to have it torn away again. I do not know if I am brave enough for this." "Being scared does not mean you are not brave," Ethan said. "And you do not have to decide anything tonight. Just stay a few days. Let me show you what life could be like here. If at the end you want to leave, I promise I will help you get wherever you want to go. But please, just give it a chance." Rebecca looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity there. Against all logic, against every self-protective instinct screaming at her to run, she found herself nodding. "A few days, then we will see." Relief and joy spread across Ethan's face, transforming it. "Thank you, Rebecca. I promise you will not regret this." She hoped he was right. The next morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through the window of Rebecca's room and waking her gently. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back. She sat up, looking around the simple room, still hardly believing she was here. A soft knock on her door preceded Sarah's cheerful voice. "Rebecca, I have water warming for washing if you would like. Breakfast will be ready soon." Rebecca dressed quickly in one of her simpler dresses, brushed and pinned her hair, and emerged to find the house smelling of coffee and frying bacon. Ethan was already gone, Sarah explained, out checking on the cattle as he did every morning. "He will be back soon," Sarah said, setting plates on the table. "He wanted to give you time to wake up without feeling watched. Ethan can be surprisingly thoughtful for a man who lives alone on a ranch." They ate breakfast together, and Sarah talked about her week working for the Carmichaels. Prudence was absolutely beside herself yesterday when she heard Ethan Dalton had ridden after you. She kept saying it was inappropriate and shocking, which is rich coming from her. "I almost quit right then, but I need the money for my shop." "I do not want to cause problems for you," Rebecca said, concerned. Sarah waved that away. "Please, I can handle Prudence Carmichael. Besides, if this works out between you and my brother, I will have an excellent reason to quit. Cannot work for the woman who wronged my sister-in-law." The casual assumption that Rebecca would become part of the family was both warming and terrifying. Rebecca was saved from having to respond by Ethan's return. He came in dusty and slightly sweaty from his morning work, his eyes immediately seeking Rebecca. "Good morning," he said, a smile lighting his face. "I hope you slept well." "I did, thank you," Rebecca said, and realized it was true. Despite everything, she had slept better than she had in weeks. Maybe because she finally had a reprieve from the constant stress of being watched and judged in town. After breakfast, Ethan offered to show Rebecca around the ranch. Sarah excused herself to ride back to town for her shift at the Carmichael house, promising to return that evening. Once she was gone, Ethan saddled 2 horses, and he and Rebecca set out to tour the property. The morning was perfect, warm but not hot, with a breeze carrying the scent of sage and grass. Ethan rode beside her, pointing out various features of the land. He showed her the creek that served as his water source, the natural meadow where his cattle grazed, the boundaries of his property marked by rock cairns and fence posts he had set himself. "It is not much compared to the big ranches like Morrison's," he said, "but it is mine, every acre of it. I proved up on a homestead claim and bought additional parcels from the land office. Someday I hope to expand to 500 acres, maybe even 1,000. His pride in what he had built was evident, and Rebecca found it endearing. This was a man who valued hard work and perseverance, who had created something from nothing through sheer determination. They rode to the top of a small rise that overlooked the entire valley. Ethan dismounted and helped Rebecca down, and they stood side by side looking at the vista spread before them. "This is my favorite spot," Ethan said quietly. "I come here when I need to think. It reminds me how far I have come and how much possibility still lies ahead." Rebecca understood what he meant. From here you could see the whole ranch laid out, but also the distant mesas and mountains, the vast sky, the sense of endless horizon. It made your problems feel smaller, more manageable. "It is beautiful," she said honestly. "You have built something worth being proud of, Ethan." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "I want to build more than just a ranch, Rebecca. I want a home, a family, a life that means something beyond just survival. That is what I am really offering you. Not just marriage, but partnership, someone to build dreams with." Rebecca's heart hammered in her chest. "We barely know each other, Ethan. How can you be so sure this would work?" "I cannot be sure," he admitted, "but I can see the possibility, and that is enough to make me want to try. You are educated, brave, kind, everything I have ever wanted in a partner. And I think, maybe, I could be what you need too. Someone who values your mind and your heart, who will stand beside you instead of trying to control you." Rebecca wanted to believe him. Every word he spoke resonated with something deep inside her, a longing for exactly what he described. But fear held her back, the fear of being hurt again, of trusting wrong. "Give it time," she said finally. "Let us see how we suit before making grand plans." "Fair enough," Ethan agreed, though his eyes held disappointment that he quickly masked. "How about we head back and I teach you some things about ranching? Might as well learn what your life would be like here." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of new experiences. Ethan taught her how to check cattle for signs of illness, how to mend a fence properly, how to read the landscape for water and good grazing. He was patient and encouraging, never making her feel foolish for not knowing things that were second nature to him. Rebecca found herself enjoying the physical work, the sense of accomplishment when she managed to hammer a fence post straight or correctly identify a cow that needed medical attention. This was so different from the mental work of teaching, but equally satisfying in its own way. They broke for lunch under the cottonwoods by the creek, eating sandwiches Sarah had packed and drinking cold water straight from the stream. Ethan told her more about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to breed better cattle, about plans to plant an orchard and vegetable garden. "I know it might seem strange for a cowboy to care about gardens," he said with a self-conscious smile. "But I like the idea of being more self-sufficient. And I thought, maybe, if I had a wife who liked teaching, she might want a garden to work in when she needed a break from books and lessons." "You would let me continue teaching?" Rebecca asked, surprised. "Why would I stop you?" Ethan looked genuinely confused. "Your teaching is part of who you are. I would never ask you to give that up. We could set up a schoolroom in one of the outbuildings, maybe teach the children from neighboring ranches. Or you could just teach for pleasure, tutor anyone who wanted to learn. The point is, it would be your choice." Tears sprang to Rebecca's eyes again. She had not realized how much she feared losing her purpose, her calling, until Ethan so casually offered to help her keep it. The town council would never allow it. "They do not have jurisdiction out here," Ethan said firmly. "This is my land, and I decide what happens on it. If you want to teach, you will teach. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me." Rebecca found herself laughing through her tears. "You really are serious about this, are not you?" "Deadly serious," Ethan confirmed. "Rebecca, I know this is fast. I know you need time to trust me. But I am committed to proving I am worthy of that trust, however long it takes." That afternoon, they rode back to the house to find Sarah had returned early with news. "The whole town is buzzing," she said excitedly. "Prudence Carmichael is having fits because people are starting to question her story about you. Apparently, several parents came forward saying you were an excellent teacher, and their children are heartbroken you are gone. And Pete from the livery told everyone how Ethan rode after you like a hero in one of those dime novels. Half the women in town are swooning over the romance of it." "That is ridiculous," Rebecca said, but she could not help smiling. "It is brilliant," Sarah corrected. "Prudence wanted to destroy your reputation, but instead, she might have given you a way to redeem it. If you come back married to a respectable rancher, it undermines everything she said about you being a woman of loose morals. It proves someone of quality saw your worth." Ethan frowned. "I did not do this to help Rebecca's reputation. I did it because it was the right thing to do." "I know that, you noble idiot," Sarah said affectionately. "But the effect is the same. If you two actually go through with this wedding, it will be the talk of the territory." "We have not decided anything yet," Rebecca said quickly, feeling overwhelmed again. Sarah's expression softened. "I know. I am just excited at the possibility. Ignore me, I get carried away sometimes." That evening, after Sarah went to sleep in the barn loft, Rebecca and Ethan sat by the fire again. It was becoming their time, these quiet hours when they could talk without interruption, getting to know each other in ways that mattered. "Tell me about your parents," Rebecca asked. "What were they like?" Ethan's face grew wistful. "My father was steady, the kind of man you could rely on no matter what. He taught me the value of honest work and keeping your word. My mother was gentler, always singing or telling stories. She believed in seeing the good in people, even when they did not deserve it." "They sound wonderful." "They were," Ethan said. "Losing them both at once nearly broke me. For a while I was so angry at the world, at God, at the disease that took them. Coming west was partly about running away from that grief. But somewhere along the way, I realized I had to honor them by becoming the man they raised me to be. Someone steady like my father, someone who saw good in others like my mother." "I think they would be proud of you," Rebecca said softly. Ethan's eyes met hers across the firelight. "What about your parents? What would they think of all this?" Rebecca considered. "My father would probably lecture me about the impracticality of making life decisions based on emotion. He was very logical, very rational. But my mother, she was a romantic under all her propriety. I think she would tell me to follow my heart, to take a chance on happiness even if it scared me." "And what does your heart tell you?" Ethan asked quietly. Rebecca's breath caught. It was too soon to answer that question truthfully, too soon to admit that her heart was already leaning toward this man, who had shown her more respect and kindness in 2 days than the entire town of Aztec had in 2 years. "Instead," she said, "my heart is telling me to take this one day at a time. To not rush into anything, but also not to run away from possibility." "I can work with that," Ethan said, and his smile was warm enough to melt her remaining reservations. The next few days fell into a comfortable pattern. Rebecca woke each morning to sunshine and the smell of coffee. She and Ethan would work around the ranch together, her learning and him teaching with endless patience. They talked constantly, sharing stories, opinions, dreams, fears. Sarah came and went, providing chaperoning and cheerful commentary, but giving them space to grow closer. Rebecca found herself laughing more than she had in months, found herself looking forward to each new day, each new conversation with Ethan. He was intelligent and thoughtful, able to discuss books and ideas with her, while also showing her how to rope a calf or predict weather by reading the sky. He treated her as an equal, asking her opinion on decisions about the ranch, listening carefully to her suggestions. On the fourth day, Ethan took her to the site where he planned to build an addition to the house. "I thought here we could put that study I mentioned, with windows facing east to catch the morning light. Good for reading and writing. And maybe here," he gestured to another area, "a larger bedroom eventually, for a family." Rebecca's heart fluttered at the implication. "You are very confident I will stay." Ethan turned to face her, his expression suddenly vulnerable. "I am hopeful you will stay. There is a difference. Rebecca, these past 4 days have been the best of my life. Getting to know you, spending time with you, it has exceeded every hope I had when I rode after your stagecoach. You are more than I imagined, smarter and funnier and kinder than I dared dream. I know it has only been a few days, but I already cannot imagine my life without you in it." Rebecca's throat tightened. "Ethan, I feel the same way, but marriage is a huge commitment. What if we are caught up in the drama of the situation? What if these feelings are not real? They are real for me," Ethan said intently, stepping closer. "Rebecca, I am not asking you to be certain of forever right now. I am just asking if you feel enough connection to take the next step. We could get married, but take our time with everything else. No pressure, no expectations beyond building a life together one day at a time. What do you say?" Rebecca looked at this man who had turned her world upside down in the best possible way. She thought about returning to the stagecoach station, boarding that coach to Santa Fe, starting over alone in another strange city. And she thought about staying here in this beautiful valley with this good man, teaching again, building something real and lasting. The choice was suddenly clear. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Joy transformed Ethan's face. He reached for her hands, squeezing them gently. "You are sure? You can change your mind anytime, Rebecca. I mean that." "I am sure," Rebecca said, and realized it was true. "I do not know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you." Ethan pulled her into his arms, and Rebecca went willingly, resting her head against his chest and hearing the rapid beat of his heart. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, the New Mexico sun warm on their backs and possibility stretching before them like the endless horizon. That evening they told Sarah, who shrieked with delight and immediately began planning. "We need to have the wedding soon before Prudence Carmichael can stir up more trouble. How about this Saturday? That gives us 4 days to prepare. We can have it here at the ranch, invite the neighbors and anyone from town who is not a complete fool." "Saturday," Rebecca repeated, feeling slightly dizzy. That was so soon. But then again, what was the point of waiting? She had made her decision. "Saturday is perfect," Ethan agreed, squeezing Rebecca's hand. "Unless you want something bigger, we could wait and plan something more elaborate." "No," Rebecca said. "Saturday is good, simple and soon before I lose my nerve." Sarah rolled her eyes. "You are not going to lose your nerve. You are in love with him, even if you have not admitted it yet." Rebecca felt her face flush, but she did not deny it. How could she, when it was becoming increasingly obvious that Sarah was right? The next 4 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Sarah proved to be an organizational genius, handling everything from arranging for a minister to ride out from the next town over to preparing food for the celebration. Ethan threw himself into finishing touches on the house and grounds, determined to make everything perfect for his bride. Rebecca altered one of her nicer dresses to serve as a wedding gown, adding lace she had been saving for a special occasion. As she sewed by lamplight, she thought about how different this was from what she had once imagined her wedding would be. She had always pictured getting married in a proper church with all her family present, wearing her mother's wedding dress, having months to plan every detail. Instead, she was marrying a man she had known for less than 2 weeks in a hastily arranged ceremony at her remote ranch. It should have felt wrong, impulsive, reckless. But it felt right, like every step in her life had been leading her here to this moment, to this man. On Friday evening, Ethan asked her to walk with him down to the creek. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the sound of running water was peaceful. They sat on a large flat rock by the water's edge, shoulders touching. "I have something for you," Ethan said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "It is not much, but I wanted you to have it." Rebecca opened the box to find a simple gold band. It was not ornate or expensive, but it was lovely in its simplicity, clearly carefully chosen. "Ethan, it is beautiful." "It was my grandmother's," Ethan said softly. "My mother gave it to me before she died, told me to give it to the woman I truly loved. I never thought I would find someone worthy of it, but I have now." Tears spilled down Rebecca's cheeks as Ethan took the ring and slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "I will treasure it always," she promised. "Rebecca," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion, "I need you to know I am not marrying you just to save you from scandal or to give you a home. I am marrying you because in the past week you have become essential to me. I love you. I know it is fast. I know we are still learning about each other, but I love you. I need you to know that." Rebecca turned to face him fully, cupping his face in her hands. "I love you too, Ethan. I did not think I could fall in love this quickly, did not think it was possible. But you have shown me what real partnership looks like, what respect and kindness and support mean in practice. You have given me back my hope and my purpose. How could I not love you?" Ethan leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but Rebecca did not pull away. She closed the distance between them, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle and sweet, full of promise and hope and the beginning of something beautiful. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow you will be my wife," he whispered. "I still cannot quite believe it." "Neither can I," Rebecca admitted, "but I am ready. I am ready to start our life together." They sat by the creek as the stars came out, talking softly about their plans and dreams, and Rebecca felt peace settle over her. Yes, this was unconventional. Yes, it was fast, but it was right. Sometimes the best things in life came when you least expected them, wrapped in packages you never would have chosen for yourself. Saturday morning dawned clear and perfect. Sarah woke Rebecca early, insisting they needed plenty of time to get her ready. As Sarah helped Rebecca dress and arrange her hair, pinning wild flowers into the curls, Rebecca felt surprisingly calm. No nerves, no doubts, just anticipation and joy. "You look beautiful," Sarah said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "My brother is the luckiest man alive." "I am the lucky one," Rebecca said honestly. "A week ago I had lost everything. Today I am gaining a husband, a sister, a home, a future. If someone had told me this would happen, I never would have believed them." By mid-morning, guests began arriving. Several neighboring ranchers and their families came, people Ethan had helped over the years who were happy to celebrate with him. To Rebecca's surprise, Mrs. Patterson arrived in a wagon driven by Pete from the livery, both of them smiling broadly. Even more surprising, several families from town appeared, parents of Rebecca's students who had braved potential disapproval to attend. "We wanted you to know you have friends in Aztec," one mother said, hugging Rebecca tightly. "What happened to you was wrong, and we are sorry we did not speak up sooner, but we are speaking up now." Rebecca was moved beyond words. She had thought the entire town had turned against her, but here was evidence that not everyone believed the lies and gossip. Some people still valued truth and justice. The minister arrived at noon, a kind-faced older man who had ridden 2 hours to perform the ceremony. Everything was set up under the cottonwood trees by the creek, simple but lovely, with wild flowers decorating the makeshift altar. When the time came, Sarah walked Rebecca down to where Ethan waited. He wore his best suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his blue eyes locked on Rebecca with an expression of such love and awe that her breath caught. This man, this good, honest, hard-working man, was about to become her husband. The thought filled her with joy. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows in front of their small gathering of friends and supporters, promising to love and honor each other, to build a life together based on respect and partnership. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her thoroughly, and cheers erupted from their guests. The celebration afterward was joyful and warm. There was food aplenty, music from a rancher who played fiddle, and dancing as the afternoon wore on. Rebecca found herself swept from partner to partner, everyone wanting to congratulate her and wish her well. But her eyes kept finding Ethan across the crowd, and every time their gazes met, she felt that flutter of excitement and happiness. As evening approached and guests began to depart, Mrs. Patterson pulled Rebecca aside. "You made the right choice, dear," the older woman said. "I can see how happy you are, how happy he is. That is what marriage should be, 2 people who make each other better." After the last guest left and Sarah diplomatically announced she would be spending the night at a neighbor's ranch, Rebecca and Ethan were finally alone. They stood in the main room of the house, their house now, and looked at each other with a mixture of joy and nervousness. "Hello, Mrs. Dalton," Ethan said softly, reaching for her hand. "Hello, Mr. Dalton," Rebecca replied, warmth flooding through her at the use of her new name. Ethan drew her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Are you happy? Incredibly happy," Rebecca said honestly. "A little overwhelmed, but happy." "We do not have to rush anything," Ethan said gently. "We have the rest of our lives to figure everything out." Rebecca appreciated his consideration, but she found she did not want to wait. This man was her husband, her partner, the person she had chosen to build a life with. "I do not want to wait," she whispered. "I want to start our marriage fully tonight." Heat flared in Ethan's eyes, but his touch remained gentle as he led her to their bedroom. What followed was tender and loving. 2 people learning each other, exploring the physical expression of the emotional connection they had built. Ethan was patient and considerate, making sure Rebecca felt cherished and loved, and she responded with a passion that surprised and delighted them both. Later, lying in Ethan's arms as moonlight streamed through the window, Rebecca felt complete in a way she had never experienced. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Ethan replied, his arms tightening around her. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, on us. I promise I will spend every day earning your trust and love." "You already have both," Rebecca assured him, and she meant it. The next weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Rebecca settled into her new life as a rancher's wife, learning the rhythms of the ranch while also carving out her own space. True to his word, Ethan helped her convert one of the outbuildings into a small schoolroom, and word spread quickly that she was willing to tutor any child whose parents wanted them educated. Within a month, She had 6 regular students, children from neighboring ranches who came twice a week for lessons. Their parents paid what they could, some in cash and some in goods, and Rebecca did not care about the compensation. She was teaching again, doing what she loved, and that was payment enough. The town of Aztec remained divided about Rebecca. Some people, led by Prudence Carmichael, continued to speak against her. But others, especially those who had seen their children flourish under her teaching, began to openly defend her. The controversy slowly faded as other scandals and concerns took its place, as frontier towns were prone to do. Ethan continued building his ranch, but now he had Rebecca's input and partnership. They talked through decisions together, planned improvements as a team. Rebecca suggested ideas for diversifying beyond just cattle, and Ethan listened and implemented many of them. They planted a large garden, started a small chicken operation for eggs, even discussed adding sheep for wool. Sarah visited regularly and became Rebecca's closest friend. The younger woman's dream of opening a dress shop moved closer to reality when Rebecca helped her work out the financial planning and business model. Eventually, Sarah did quit her position with the Carmichaels, announcing she would no longer work for a family that had treated her sister-in-law so poorly. Prudence was reportedly furious, but Sarah did not care. As fall turned to winter and winter to spring, Rebecca and Ethan's love deepened and matured. The initial passion remained, but it was joined by the comfortable intimacy of 2 people who truly knew and accepted each other. They had disagreements occasionally, but they learned to talk through them, to compromise and find solutions together. One evening in late spring, almost a year after they had married, Rebecca realized she had not had her monthly courses in some time. Her heart raced as she calculated dates, then raced faster as the implications sank in. She waited until she was certain before saying anything to Ethan. When she told him over dinner one night, simply and directly, that she was pregnant, Ethan's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, then joy, then something close to awe. "We are going to have a baby," he whispered. "We are going to have a baby," Rebecca confirmed, laughing at his stunned expression. Ethan jumped up, pulling her into his arms and spinning her around before carefully setting her down as if she were made of glass. "I am going to be a father. You are going to be a mother. We are going to be parents." He said it like he was testing the words, trying them on for size. "Are you happy?" Rebecca asked, though she could already see the answer on his face. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Ethan said, his eyes bright. "Rebecca, you have given me everything. A home, a purpose, love, and now a family. I do not have words for how grateful I am." "I am the grateful one," Rebecca said, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "You gave me a second chance when I thought my life was over. You showed me what real love looks like. This baby is the beginning of the life we have built together." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Ethan became impossibly more protective and attentive, constantly asking if Rebecca needed anything, worrying about her health. She found it endearing even when it was slightly annoying. Sarah was thrilled at the prospect of becoming an aunt and immediately began sewing baby clothes. Rebecca continued teaching through her 6th month, then reluctantly took a break as the pregnancy became more difficult. Her students made her cards and gifts, and their parents assured her the schoolroom would be waiting whenever she was ready to return. In December of 1884, on a cold but clear night, Rebecca went into labor. Ethan rode like a man possessed to fetch the midwife from the nearest neighboring ranch, a capable woman named Mrs. Chen, who had delivered dozens of babies. Sarah stayed with Rebecca, holding her hand and offering encouragement through the long hours of labor. When the baby finally arrived in the early hours of the morning, it was a boy. red-faced and squalling with powerful lungs. Rebecca held him close, tears streaming down her face as she counted his tiny fingers and toes, marveling at the miracle of this new life she and Ethan had created. Ethan came in from where he had been anxiously pacing, and his face crumpled when he saw his son. He sat carefully beside Rebecca on the bed, touching the baby's downy head with a wondering finger. "He is perfect," Ethan breathed. "Absolutely perfect." They named him James Dalton after Ethan's father, and from the moment he was born, he was the center of their world. Ethan proved to be a devoted father, taking on night feedings without complaint, rocking the baby for hours when he was fussy, constantly amazed by every tiny development. Rebecca found motherhood both challenging and rewarding. There were exhausting days when she wondered how she would manage, but Ethan and Sarah were always there to help, to give her breaks, to share the load. It was not the life she had planned when she became a schoolteacher in St. Louis, but it was infinitely better than anything she could have imagined. When James was 6 months old, Rebecca began teaching again, bringing the baby with her to the schoolroom. Her students were delighted, and she discovered that having a baby around was actually a wonderful teaching tool for the older girls learning about childcare and responsibility. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier and more chaotic than before, but filled with love and purpose. The ranch continued to prosper under Ethan's careful management and Rebecca's innovative ideas. They added a second story to the house when Rebecca became pregnant again, 2 years after James was born, this time with a daughter they named Margaret after Rebecca's mother. Sarah eventually met a good man, a newcomer to Aztec who appreciated her intelligence and ambition. They married in a ceremony at Ethan and Rebecca's ranch, Sarah insisting she wanted to be married in the same place her brother had found such happiness. The town of Aztec slowly changed as well. Mayor Carmichael was voted out of office after a series of poor decisions, and new leadership proved more progressive. A proper school was built, and the town council approached Rebecca about becoming the official teacher again. She politely declined, preferring the freedom of teaching at her ranch, but she appreciated the offer and the implicit acknowledgement that she had been wronged. Prudence Carmichael never apologized, but she lost much of her social influence after several of her own scandals came to light. Rebecca felt no satisfaction in the woman's downfall, just relief that she could no longer cause harm. As the years passed, Rebecca and Ethan's love only grew stronger. They faced challenges together, droughts and hard winters, cattle diseases and financial pressures, but they always had each other. Their family grew to include 4 children total, 2 boys and 2 girls, and the house expanded to accommodate them all. Rebecca never stopped teaching, though her classroom changed from the schoolhouse in Aztec to her own converted barn, then eventually to a proper schoolhouse Ethan built on their property. Children from ranches across the region came to learn from her, and she gained a reputation as one of the finest teachers in the New Mexico territory. Ethan built his ranch into one of the most successful operations in the area, but he never lost sight of what mattered most. His family always came first, and he made sure his children knew they were loved and valued. He taught his sons and daughters equally about ranching and responsibility, just as Rebecca taught them all to read and think critically. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ethan took Rebecca back to the creek where they had exchanged their first kiss. The children were with Sarah for the evening, giving them rare time alone. They sat on the same rock where he had given her his grandmother's ring and watched the sunset paint the sky. "Do you ever regret it?" Ethan asked, his arm around Rebecca's shoulders. "Giving up teaching in town, tying your life to a cowboy and a remote ranch?" Rebecca looked at him in surprise. Regret it. Ethan, marrying you was the best decision I ever made. You gave me everything I thought I had lost and so much more. You gave me love, respect, partnership, a family, the freedom to pursue my calling on my own terms. How could I possibly regret that? I just want to make sure you are happy, Ethan said softly. You gave up a lot for me. I gave up a life that was crushing me, Rebecca corrected. A town that did not value me, a position that was contingent on me suppressing who I really was. You did not take anything from me, Ethan. You gave me the space to become who I was meant to be. I teach more students now than I ever could have in Aztec schoolhouse, and I teach them what I believe they need to know, not what some narrow-minded council dictates. I have children of my own that I am raising to value education and equality. I have a partner who respects and loves me. I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. Ethan pulled her close, kissing her temple. I am the lucky one, Rebecca. Every single day I thank whatever providence brought you into my life. You took a crazy chance on a stranger who rode after your stagecoach, and you made me the happiest man alive. We took a chance on each other, Rebecca said, and it paid off better than either of us could have hoped. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting and true. The ranch spread out below them, the house lights warm and welcoming, smoke curling from the chimney. Their children were safe and happy, their future secure, their love unshakable. Rebecca thought back to that terrible day when she had packed her trunks with trembling hands, believing her life was over. She thought about Ethan riding after her, offering her hope when she had none. She thought about the leap of faith they had both taken, trusting in something that seemed impossible but felt right. I love you, Ethan Dalton, she said, the words as true now as the first time she had spoken them. I love you too, Rebecca Dalton, Ethan replied. Today, tomorrow, and every day for the rest of our lives. And there, under the vast New Mexico sky, with the sound of the creek singing its eternal song, they held each other and looked toward a future that was bright with promise and possibility, built on the foundation of love, trust, and partnership that had begun the day. Cowboy rode after a schoolmarm and convinced her to take a chance on happiness. The years continued to unfold in a tapestry of ordinary miracles. Their eldest son, James, grew into a thoughtful young man who loved books as much as ranching, proof that a child could inherit the best of both parents. He would often help his mother teach the younger students, showing a natural aptitude for education that made Rebecca's heart swell with pride. Margaret, their first daughter, had her father's blue eyes and her mother's fierce determination. She announced at age 7 that she would become a doctor someday, an outrageous ambition for a girl in the 1880s, but neither parent discouraged her. Instead, they encouraged her to study sciences along with her other lessons, and Ethan made sure she learned anatomy by helping him treat sick cattle. Their younger children, Thomas and Elizabeth, were still small but already showing distinct personalities. Thomas was adventurous and fearless, always climbing things he should not and exploring every corner of the ranch. Elizabeth was quieter, sensitive, with a gift for music that emerged when Sarah gave her a small guitar. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Ethan's careful stewardship and Rebecca's innovative thinking combined to create one of the most successful operations in the territory. They were fair employers, paying decent wages and treating their ranch hands with respect, which meant they attracted good workers who stayed for years. Rebecca's school expanded to over 20 regular students, coming from ranches as far as a day's ride away. Some families even sent their children to board with neighbors during the school term just so they could study with Rebecca. She taught everything from basic reading to advanced mathematics, from history to science, making no distinction between what boys and girls could learn. Several of her female students went on to become teachers themselves, spreading Rebecca's progressive educational philosophy throughout the territory. The small schoolroom Ethan had built eventually proved too small, so he constructed a larger building, a proper one-room schoolhouse with windows on 3 sides for light and a genuine blackboard shipped from St. Louis. It stood on a hill overlooking the ranch, painted white like the schoolhouse in Aztec had been, but this one represented freedom and possibility rather than constraint. Sarah's dress shop in Aztec became hugely successful, her designs sought after by women throughout the region. She married her husband Robert in 1887, and they had 3 children of their own. The families remained close, celebrating holidays together, supporting each other through challenges, building the kind of extended family network that was essential on the frontier. Mrs. Patterson remained a dear friend until her death in 1890, when she passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 72. Rebecca spoke at her funeral, thanking her publicly for the kindness she had shown when everyone else had turned away. It was Mrs. Patterson's faith in Rebecca that had given her the courage to take Ethan's offer seriously, and Rebecca never forgot that debt. Pete from the livery also remained a friend and ally. His daughter Sarah, who had learned so much from Rebecca, became a teacher herself, and eventually took over the official school in Aztec when the previous teacher retired. It was a sweet vindication that one of Rebecca's former students now taught in the very schoolhouse Rebecca had been driven from, and she did so with all the progressive values Rebecca had instilled. The town of Aztec itself evolved over the years. The railroad came through in 1889, bringing new prosperity and new people. The rough frontier town gradually became more civilized, with boardwalks and street lamps, a proper bank and hotel. Some longtime residents resisted the changes, but progress was inevitable. Mayor Carmichael moved away in 1888 after losing his dry goods business to a competitor. Prudence went with him, reportedly to live with relatives in Denver. Rebecca felt no triumph in their departure, only relief that a painful chapter had finally closed. She had built such a good life beyond that initial injustice, that the people who had caused it no longer had any power to hurt her. On a warm spring day in 1894, 15 years after that fateful morning when Rebecca had packed her trunks in disgrace, a stranger knocked on the door of the Dalton ranch. Rebecca answered, her youngest daughter Elizabeth clinging to her skirts to find a well-dressed woman in her 40s standing there. "I am looking for Mrs. Rebecca Dalton," the woman said. "I was told she lived here." "I am Rebecca Dalton," Rebecca confirmed. "How can I help you?" The woman's eyes grew bright with emotion. "You do not remember me, do you? I am Susan Carmichael. I was one of your students in Aztec before you were forced to leave." Recognition dawned. Susan had been about 10 years old back then, a bright girl whose mother Prudence had been determined to keep ignorant. "Susan, of course. Please come in." Over tea, Susan told her story. After Rebecca left, Susan had continued studying in secret, borrowing books from friends, teaching herself. When she turned 18, she had left Aztec against her parents' wishes and gone to college in the East, one of the first women admitted to the new program at a progressive university. She had just completed her degree in mathematics and was now returning west to take a position teaching at the new high school being established in Santa Fe. "I came to thank you," Susan said, tears streaming down her face. "You showed me that I could be more than what my mother wanted me to be. You taught me that education was power, that women had just as much right to knowledge as men. You changed my life, Mrs. Dalton. I became a teacher because of you." Rebecca found herself crying too, moved beyond words. This was what teaching was about, not just imparting facts but opening doors, changing lives, helping young people see their own potential. I am so proud of you, Susan. You did this yourself, through your own determination and intelligence. I just showed you the door, you walked through it. You did more than that, Susan insisted. You made me believe I could walk through it. That made all the difference. After Susan left, Rebecca sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the valley. Ethan came to join her, sitting in the chair beside hers and taking her hand. Their fingers intertwined automatically, the gesture as natural as breathing after 15 years of marriage. "Good day," he asked. "Wonderful day," Rebecca said, and told him about Susan's visit. "Sometimes I wonder if I am making a real difference, teaching children in a converted barn in the middle of nowhere. Then something like this happens, and I remember why I do it." "You are making more difference than you realize," Ethan said. "Every child you teach goes out into the world changed, better, more equipped to build a good life. That ripples outward in ways we cannot even measure. You are not just teaching children, Rebecca. You are shaping the future of this territory." Rebecca squeezed his hand, grateful as always for his unwavering support. "We are shaping it together. None of this would be possible without you." Their oldest son, James, appeared on the porch, now 17 and nearly as tall as his father. "Supper is almost ready. Margaret made stew, and she is getting bossy about everyone coming to the table on time." Ethan laughed. "That sounds like your sister. Tell her we will be right there." As James went back inside, Rebecca felt a wave of contentment so profound it almost hurt. This life she and Ethan had built from the ashes of her disgrace, this family they had created together, this purpose they both served in their different ways, it was everything she had never known she wanted. "You remember that day when you rode after me?" she asked Ethan. "When you proposed marriage to a woman you barely knew?" "Best decision I ever made," Ethan said immediately. "Craziest decision I ever made to say yes," Rebecca countered with a smile. "But also the best. Thank you for seeing me, Ethan. For seeing past the scandal and the gossip to who I really was. For giving me a chance to prove myself." "You gave me just as much," Ethan said seriously. "Before you, I was building a ranch but not a life. I was existing but not really living. You taught me what partnership means, what real love looks like. You gave me a family and a purpose beyond just accumulating land and cattle. You made me better, Rebecca. Every single day you make me better." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, then went inside to join their children for dinner. The large dining table was crowded with their 4 children, plus 2 ranch hands who ate with the family, and the noise level was considerable. But it was happy noise, the sound of a family that loved and enjoyed each other. After dinner, as was their custom, they gathered in the living room. Rebecca played piano while the children sang, a nightly ritual that had started when James was small and continued as the family grew. Ethan sat in his chair watching them all, his expression content, occasionally joining in on songs he knew. Later, after the children were in bed, Rebecca and Ethan sat by the fire as they had done since their first days together. Rebecca was correcting papers from her students, and Ethan was reviewing ledgers from the ranch. They worked in companionable silence, occasionally sharing observations or asking opinions, 2 partners managing their respective domains. "I had a letter from the Territorial Education Board today," Rebecca said casually. "They want me to train other teachers in my methods. They are impressed with the outcomes from my students and want to spread similar practices throughout New Mexico." Ethan looked up, pride shining in his eyes. "Rebecca, that is wonderful. What did you tell them?" "I said I would consider it, But any training would have to happen here. I will not leave my children or my students for extended periods. If they want to learn from me, they can come to the ranch during summers." "That seems more than fair," Ethan agreed. "We could convert the bunkhouse for housing visiting teachers. It would need some work, but it is doable." They began planning, as they always did, turning a new challenge into an opportunity. This was what their marriage had been from the start: two people working together to build something bigger than either could create alone. The training program began the following summer and proved remarkably successful. Teachers from across the territory came to spend weeks at the Dalton Ranch, observing Rebecca's methods and learning her progressive techniques. Many were initially skeptical, particularly about her insistence on teaching girls the same curriculum as boys, but seeing the results convinced even the doubters. One teacher, a middle-aged man who had taught for 20 years, told Rebecca, "I came here thinking you were some radical who did not understand practical education. But watching you teach, seeing how your students think critically and question and engage, I realize I have been doing it wrong all these years. You have opened my eyes to what teaching can be." Rebecca's influence spread throughout New Mexico and eventually beyond as her students became teachers, as the teachers she trained went back to their schools with new methods, as her reputation grew. She never sought fame or recognition, but it came anyway. Newspapers wrote articles about the innovative schoolmarm on a remote ranch who was revolutionizing education on the frontier. Through it all, Ethan remained her rock and support. He proudly told anyone who would listen about his brilliant wife, never showing a hint of jealousy or insecurity about her growing fame. He understood that Rebecca's success was his success, that they were a team in everything. Their children grew and flourished under the attention of two parents who loved them deeply and encouraged their individual dreams. James decided to become a lawyer, a profession that would use his love of reading and his desire to help people. He went east for college with his parents' blessing and financial support, the first of the Dalton children to get formal higher education. Margaret, true to her childhood declaration, pursued medicine. It was a harder path for a woman, but she was determined and brilliant. Rebecca and Ethan supported her completely, helping her find the few medical schools that accepted female students. Thomas followed in his father's footsteps, falling in love with ranching and declaring he would expand the Dalton Ranch until it was the biggest in the territory. Ethan taught him everything he knew, pleased to have at least one child who wanted to continue his legacy. Elizabeth pursued music, her natural gift developing into genuine talent with proper instruction. She eventually traveled to study in San Francisco, then came home to teach music at Rebecca's school, adding arts to the curriculum. By the turn of the century, the Dalton Ranch was an institution in New Mexico. It was not just a cattle operation, but also an educational center, a training ground for teachers, and a model for how a family could build success through cooperation and mutual support. Rebecca was now in her early 40s, still teaching, still passionate about education. Ethan was in his mid-40s, still working the ranch daily, though he had good managers now who handled much of the day-to-day operations. They had more help and more resources than in the early years, but they never forgot where they came from or what they had built together. One evening, as they celebrated their 21st wedding anniversary surrounded by their grown children and grandchildren, Rebecca stood to make a toast. 21 years ago, I thought my life was over. I was being run out of town in disgrace, convinced I had failed at everything that mattered. Then a man I barely knew rode after me and offered me something I never expected. A second chance, a partnership, a love that has sustained me through every challenge and amplified every joy. She looked at Ethan, her eyes bright with emotion. "Ethan, you saved me that day, not from scandal but from giving up on myself. You showed me that one person's judgment does not define your worth, that real love means supporting each other's dreams rather than constraining them. You have been my partner, my love, my best friend for 21 years. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I fall more in love with you every single day." Ethan stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her soundly while their children and grandchildren cheered. "You saved me too, Rebecca," he said softly, just for her. "You made my house a home, my work meaningful, my life complete. Riding after that stagecoach was the craziest thing I ever did, but it led to the best life I could imagine. I love you, now and always." They held each other as their family celebrated around them, two people who had taken an enormous risk and been rewarded beyond measure. The scandal that had brought them together was long forgotten by everyone except them, and they remembered it only as the catalyst that had given them everything. The years continued to pass in a rhythm of work and family, challenges and triumphs. Rebecca kept teaching into her 50s, training new generations of students and teachers. Ethan gradually handed over more ranch responsibilities to Thomas, while remaining actively involved in decision-making and mentoring. They became grandparents multiple times over as their children married and started families. The ranch house expanded yet again to accommodate family gatherings that grew larger with each passing year. Sunday dinners at the Dalton Ranch became legendary. Massive affairs with 3 generations present, children running everywhere, multiple conversations happening simultaneously, and love binding it all together. When New Mexico finally achieved statehood in 1912, Rebecca was invited to the ceremony as an honored guest, recognized for her contributions to education in the territory. She attended with Ethan beside her, proud and distinguished at 59, still her greatest supporter and champion. As they walked through the state capitol building, Rebecca reflected on the long journey from that terrible day in Aztec to this moment of triumph and recognition. So much had changed, so much had been built, so many lives had been touched. And it had all started because one man had seen past scandal and gossip to the woman beneath and had offered her hope when she had none. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked, noticing her reflective expression. "I am thinking that I am the luckiest woman alive," Rebecca said, "and that everything happens for a reason. Getting run out of Aztec was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it led directly to the best thing, you." "I am the lucky one," Ethan countered. "You could have gotten on that stagecoach and never looked back. Instead, you took a crazy chance on a cowboy with a dream and made that dream come true in ways I never imagined." They smiled at each other, these two people who had loved each other for over 3 decades, who had built an empire together not of land and cattle but of family and purpose, an enduring partnership. In the end, Rebecca Dalton taught for 42 years, training hundreds of students directly and influencing thousands more through the teachers she mentored. 3 schools in New Mexico were eventually named after her, honoring her contributions to education. But her greatest legacy was not measured in schools or students or recognition. It was measured in the lives she had touched, the young women she had encouraged to dream bigger, the children she had taught to think critically and value learning. Ethan Dalton built his ranch into one of the most successful operations in the state, but he always insisted his greatest achievement was his family. He was a devoted husband, father, and grandfather, showing multiple generations what it meant to be a good man through his actions rather than just his words. They lived well into their 70s, healthy and active, and still deeply in love. They still sat by the fire together in the evenings, still held hands automatically when walking, still kissed each other goodnight after 50 years of marriage. Their children and grandchildren marveled at their relationship, using them as the model for what marriage should be. When Rebecca finally passed in 1929 at the age of 73, peacefully in her sleep after a full and meaningful life, Ethan mourned deeply, but without regret. They had been granted 50 years together, 5 decades of partnership and love and shared purpose. She had shaped not just his life but the lives of countless others, and her influence would continue through all the people she had taught and inspired. Ethan followed her 2 years later, dying in the same bed they had shared for half a century. His last words were about Rebecca, how much he loved her, how grateful he was for every day they had together, how he looked forward to seeing her again. Their children buried them side by side on the hill overlooking the ranch, near the creek where they had shared their first kiss and exchanged so many meaningful conversations. The headstone bore simple inscriptions: Rebecca Winters Dalton, teacher and pioneer, 1856–1929, and Ethan Dalton, rancher and devoted husband, 1857–1931, beloved parents and grandparents, but the real monument to their lives was not carved in stone. It was in the school that continued to operate on the ranch, teaching new generations with the progressive methods Rebecca had pioneered. It was in their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who spread across the state and beyond, carrying forward the values of education, equality, hard work, and mutual respect that Rebecca and Ethan had modeled. It was in the countless students whose lives had been changed by a teacher who believed in them and encouraged them to reach beyond what society said they could be. It was in the teachers who spread her methods throughout New Mexico and neighboring states, transforming education one classroom at a time. Most of all, it was in the love story itself, passed down through generations of the Dalton family. The tale of how a schoolmarm was run out of town in disgrace, how a cowboy rode after her and convinced her to stay, how they fell deeply in love and built an extraordinary life together. It became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren, a reminder that sometimes the worst moments in life lead to the best outcomes, that courage and love can overcome any obstacle, that partnership and mutual respect are the foundation of lasting happiness. The Dalton Ranch continued to operate for over a century, eventually becoming a historical landmark. The schoolhouse Rebecca had taught in was preserved as a museum, visited by thousands interested in frontier education and the remarkable woman who had revolutionized teaching on the New Mexico frontier. And always, when people heard the story of Rebecca and Ethan Dalton, they came away inspired. Inspired by Rebecca's courage in accepting a stranger's proposal when her life seemed hopeless. Inspired by Ethan's boldness in riding after a woman he barely knew because he recognized something worth fighting for. Inspired by the partnership they built together, the way they supported each other's dreams and raised a family while also making the world around them better. Their story proved that real love was not just about passion or romance, though they had both in abundance. It was about respect and partnership, about supporting each other through challenges, about building something together that was greater than either person could create alone. It was about taking risks, having faith, and being willing to fight for happiness even when the odds seemed impossibly stacked against you. And so the legacy lived on, generation after generation, a testament to what two people could build when they chose to trust and love in each other and in the possibility of second chances. The schoolmarm who was run out of town and the cowboy who rode after her became more than just historical figures. They became symbols of hope, courage, and the transformative power of love that endures beyond even death itself. Their story began with heartbreak and injustice, but ended with triumph and legacy. It was a life well lived, a love well cherished, and a partnership that changed not just two people but an entire community and beyond. And in the end, that was the greatest gift they left behind. Proof that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope for a better tomorrow, always the possibility of love when you least expect it, always the chance for a second act that exceeds your wildest dreams.